Доброго дня, шановні пані і панове. Дозвольте від імені ректора Київського національного університету імені Тараса Шевченка, академіка Леоніда Губерського та ректорату університету вітати в цій залі міністра закордонних справ Королівства Швеція пані Маргот Вальстрьом. Аплодисменти, будь ласка. Та міністра закордонних справ Республіки Польща Яцека Чепутовича. Наші високоповажні гості перебувають в Україні з державним візитом на відзначення 10-річчя Східного партнерства. Це проект, який надає можливість країнам Східної Європи брати участь у всіх європейських процесах. І сьогодні ми маємо високу честь і нагоду почути з перших вуст від наших високоповажних гостей про те, якими вони бачать наступні роки Східного партнерства, якими вони бачать місце України в Східному партнерстві і якою є перспектива політики Європейського Союзу щодо політики у Європі і у світі. Принагідно дозвольте від імені усіх вас і від імені університету загалом подякувати народу Швеції, народу Польщі за ту підтримку, яку вони надають Україні в її боротьбі, неоголошеній війні на сході України, і подякувати за ті зусилля, які уряди Швеції та Польщі спрямовують на забезпечення і допомогу цілісності, суверенітету, незалежності української держави. Давайте аплодисментами подякуємо. Дозвольте запросити до слова міністра закордонних справ Королівства Швеція пані Маргот Вальстрьом.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the warm welcome to your university. And I'm happy to be here with my friend, the Polish foreign minister. And we come here, of course, as friends of Ukraine, and we appreciate meeting, especially with young people, the new generation of Ukraine. And also this morning we met with civil society representatives. I prepared just a few words, and I would start with something that you might recognize. Don't envy, my friend, a wealthy man. A rich man's life is spent. Without a friend or faithful love, those things he has to rent. Don't envy anyone, my friend, for if you look, you'll find that there's no heaven on the earth, no more than in the sky. Nie zawidu bahatumu. I don't know if that is the right, but in this beautiful university, I had to cite Taras Shevchenko. And this is not only because we are guests in Kiev today, but in fact, I often read from poems in my speeches, and there is a reason for that, because I truly believe that poetry, music, and culture bring people together. They help people to get to know each other and better understand each other. And this is exactly what we need also in foreign policy. The topic of today is the future of Ukraine in Europe and the Eastern Partnership. And to me, Ukraine is already European, and I'm optimistic also about the future of your country, because you, the vibrant young people in Ukraine, are the ones who will shape it. And we are often called the VIPs, the very important persons, but I really truly believe that you are the VIPs. You are the very important persons that have to help shape your own future and the future of this country. Of course, there are challenges, and I would like to just shortly point out three issues that must be solved if we want prosperity for Europe and for Ukraine. we have to overcome polarization, to increase equality, and to build trust in public institutions. And I hope this will be part of the conversation we will have with the President shortly. Firstly, if we look at Europe today, we see a growing polarization. And just take issues such as migration, climate change, or gender equality as an example. And there are really two opposing sides that both today feel a kind of momentum. Unfortunately, I would say the public debate about these issues, especially on the internet, is often becoming poisoned by hatred and agitation. And in Ukraine, language and culture are being used to create artificial dividing lines in society. Also, the media landscape, where each candidate has his or her own TV channel, makes it difficult for people to evaluate parties and candidates. And we must overcome this polarization because it threatens to tear our societies apart. And our response should be to seek strength in diversity, to recognize the differences in backgrounds, opinions, worldviews, and whatever. It makes us stronger together. And there must be forums where we can talk to each other in respectful ways. And we are financing a project to strengthen public service in Ukraine. We hope that this will promote political discussions in Ukraine and that it will reach all Ukrainians regardless of their native language. Secondly, I think we must deal with social inequality because the wealth of this world is unprecedented, and yet in Europe many people live under social and economic conditions that are unacceptable. They live in poverty. And sometimes people talk about inequality as if it was something modern, something good for business, for entrepreneurship. But let me tell you this. Those who say that have never experienced poverty themselves. And social equality and social security and equality is about dignity, and it is about giving people the same opportunities to do what they want in life. And I know that the European Union, the IMF, and other donors demand the Ukraine to carry out difficult reforms. And let me underline that the point of these conditions is to make life better for ordinary Ukrainians. And when talking about giving people equal opportunities, I mean the whole population, not just 50%. We are strong advocates for gender equality in Sweden. It is the right thing to do because how can we talk about democracy and human rights if we leave half of the population outside or aside? And it is also a smart thing to do because all studies show that societies where women and men have the same rights, representation, and resources are more prosperous, happier, and more secure societies as well. There has recently been a strengthened focus on gender equality within the Eastern Partnership, and we will push for more. In Ukraine, I think there has been good progress in the last few years, and I hope that the new president and the new parliament will build on it, and we expect that. And my third and last issue is to build trust in public institutions, because this is important here in Ukraine, and it is something very close to the painful subject of corruption and rule of law. How can you trust an institution if you know that the staff is filling their pockets and not doing their jobs? Why pay taxes if you don't have to, and if you suspect that your money is being misused and given to shady procurement schemes? And why care about politics and reforms if you don't trust the politicians? To build trust takes effort and time, and there must be a genuine willingness from the top to deal with it, and I hope there is with the new administration, as well as a pressure from civil society and media. And looking at Ukraine, I think the conditions are there, and we will do everything we can to help you with it. So this would be challenging enough for a country that was not exposed to external aggression. We condemn, of course, the Russian aggression and the illegal annexation of Crimea. We will maintain sanctions until Moscow has changed its behavior, and we stand with you, with Ukraine, in solidarity. And besides the military aggression, Ukraine and other European countries are exposed to disinformation and hybrid activities. And what I've just mentioned, polarization, social inequality, and mistrust are just the factors that hybrid warfare targets and fuels. So these are not just the important issues because they make you feel good. They are important parts of building resilience and security. So finally, let me repeat that we have these challenges in common, and we must tackle them jointly by supporting and learning from each other, and by strengthening the values that underpin the European cooperation. So this, to tackle challenges together, is also the cornerstone of the Eastern Partnership, of the European Union, and indeed of our Swedish-Polish visit to Ukraine. So once again, thank you very much for lending your time to listen to us and be with you. And we're happy to answer to any questions you have. Thank you.
Pan міністр, так? Шановні пані і панове, дозвольте запросити до слова міністра закордонних справ Республіки Польща, пана Яцека Чепутовича.
It is a privilege for me to address students of Taras Shevchenko University, very well known. And it is indeed my fourth visit to Kiev in the last 6 months. The first one was to support the country and society after the Kerch Strait incident, and then we also visited later. Last time I was here 10 days ago to represent Polish government and Polish president at the inauguration of the President Zelensky. I think that it is first of all a sign of our support, Poland and Sweden, to reforms in Ukraine and to Ukrainian society. It is a very historic moment, change of power and hope of reforms. And we can say that also we represent to a certain extent other countries which are involved in Eastern Partnership on behalf of the European Union. And indeed, the subject of the discussion today is the Eastern Partnership. I think that it is worth underlining that it is a Poland and Sweden initiative started 10 years ago during the summit held in Prague. At that time, the European neighborhood policy seemed to be running out of new ideas and political motion. New regional initiatives like the Union of Mediterranean started to flourish. In that context, the concept of Eastern Partnership emerged. The proposal was directed to countries of the region. Such umbrella structures do usually work well in European external policy on the condition that they are supported with a strong political backup. Ukrainians stood up firmly in defense a long-negotiated association agreement with the European Union when President Yanukovych wanted to withdraw from it at the very last moment. That is how the revolution of dignity started. The association agreement, together with the visa-free regime, formed the core of the Eastern Partnership. This agreement establishing the deep and comprehensive free trade area opened up the European market to Ukrainian producers and traders. It resulted in a sharp rise of the EU-Ukrainian trade. Another milestone, visa waiver, opened up European space for millions of Ukrainians. Regular sectoral cooperation between the ministries of Ukraine and the EU states was inaugurated. Let me emphasize that the very clearly we clearly understand the pivotal role of Ukraine within the Eastern Partnership. As a country with the biggest population, vibrant and pro-European society, potentially very strong economy with significant natural resources, Ukraine constitutes a cornerstone of the Eastern Partnership. Indeed, we discussed together with Minister Wallström and the representatives of the Ukrainian administration already, and we will discuss today the usefulness of this Eastern Partnership idea. We encourage Ukrainian government to use this mechanism because it's a policy positively assessed within the European Union and could be used for you to make relations with the European Union closer. I think that at the 10th anniversary, we also discussed within the European Union how we can upgrade this instrument to better serve your needs. Poland and Ukraine are very close partners and indeed neighbors, sharing centuries of common history, facing many challenges of today, and I am sure we have a bright future. We stand firmly in support of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. We have raised the issue of Russian aggression and situation in occupied Crimea in numerous international fora, including during our membership in the Security Council, United Nations, in the European Union, NATO, and the Council of Europe. I personally conducted and chaired the meeting of the Security Council when we discussed the situation in occupied territory. Our aim is to maintain the conflict in Ukraine at the international agenda. We cannot forget that Ukraine was invaded by Russia, and we have to try to resolve the problem, but in accordance with international law. I am convinced that putting an end to the ongoing Russian-Ukrainian conflict being the most critical threat to the regional security should be the Western community's highest priority. We cannot allow for the creation of yet another frozen conflict in Europe. Poland welcomed and actively supports the modernization process in Ukraine. We are ready to share our experience, how we approach the European Union, how we reformed the system, what was necessary in order to enter the European Union. I am very glad that many Polish experts, civil servants, public administration representatives has already been involved in training of Ukrainian public administration, but also civic society, and we will definitely continue this activity if you feel it is useful for you. We are convinced that the EU should further support Ukraine in the implementation of the association agreement. This is the best tool to introduce European standards in the Ukrainian social and economic life and gradually integrate Ukraine with the EU internal market. We meet here the most, I think, known and important university in Ukraine, Taras Shevchenko University in Kiev, but I'm also a professor working at Warsaw University, and in Poland there is 40,000 Ukrainian students currently studying, and every university can find these representatives of your society. There are many working, but also studying. I think that it is also a contribution to the creation of new elites of Ukraine, and we welcome them, we invite them. Of course, they should also, first of all, remember about their origins and use this knowledge and skills they learn in Poland and other EU member states, using also the possibility to travel without visa, and then come back and build a country, a society here. Raising trade turnover is another positive factor in Polish-Ukrainian relations, reaching more than $8 billion last year. Poland is the biggest importer of Ukrainian goods in the EU and the second largest exporter to Ukraine among the EU countries. Polish companies are strongly present in Ukraine, eager to trade with and to invest, but also we are open for Ukrainian companies because we have to establish relations, trade relations, investment and relations between civil society. All these strong links were built along with the Eastern Partnership. Now, 10 years after its creation, the Eastern Partnership should be structurally strengthened, and Sweden and Poland are of the opinion that it should be used, strengthened, and the role should be increased. How to do it? Through legal approximation, through creating institutionalizations, maybe some institutions dealing with the EU on the part of the Eastern Partnership countries, and also strengthening sectoral cooperation among Eastern Partnership countries and between Eastern Partnership and the European Union. This can be done by extending to new fields like environment, chemical protection, energy security, digital market, financial services. We already started to talk about roaming. Why not to include one tariff for European Union and Ukraine in order your citizens, our citizens visiting Ukraine not pay too much on connections. So these are examples of practical cooperation we have to use in order to strengthen our relations. Members of the Eastern Partnership do differ. They also demonstrate various aspirations when it comes to the level of cooperation they seek with the European Union. Yet, the Eastern Partnership still represents an approach they can all benefit from. 10 years after its creation, the Eastern Partnership holds the potential to bring our neighbors closer to the European Union. Together, we should reflect on an ambitious political agenda and a narrative that will keep the Eastern Partnership attractive for the countries concerned and also for the European Union and particularly for our citizens. Thank you very much for this possibility to address you.
Дякуємо, пане міністр. Шановні друзі, тепер в нас є сесія запитань та відповідей. У нас є можливість мікрофон поставити запитання. Піднімайте руку, будь ласка, і будь ласка, представляйтеся і ставте питання. Тільки щире прохання ставити питання, а не виступати. Дякую.
Number one, number two.
Hello. My question is for both speakers. And can elections in European Parliament change opinion of Europe to Ukraine? And can role of populist parties change opinion about Ukraine? Thank you.
Thank you for that question, which is maybe the most relevant one at the moment. We are, of course, here because we are curious and want to know more about what the new leadership here intends to do and what kind of contacts we can establish between the European Union and Ukraine. I think not much is known so far about exactly the road forward and the priorities. So we want to know more about that. What we welcomed was, of course, that this seemed to be a free and fair election with an unexpected outcome. And sometimes that is maybe the best you can say about an election, that it was not something that was known on beforehand, but an unexpected candidate that won the election. And I think also a lot might not happen before then a new parliament is in place. So for us, it's really to establish and offer our support and help in the process. And we appreciate that the first visit, apparently, by the new president will be to Brussels and to establish the contact with the European Union. So we like that. But mainly, we look forward to seeing what will happen here, and if we can then help to set the agenda by establishing what we appreciate the most of our cooperation so far, and to also encourage Ukraine to continue with the reforms. That is, then we will be happy, I think, when we leave.
That's right. I can add to that our visit is just the aim of it is to underline support for the society, for the country, not for a political party, because they change. So when we, as a foreign minister, deal with the countries, there are different parties in power in different states, but we have to deal with the sovereign states. So we will support Ukraine, we will support goals of Ukrainian foreign policy, which is territorial integrity within the internationally recognized border, one of them, and we will support also the international law as a base for relations today. Of course, for us it's also very important that Ukraine is on the path of reform. We heard a lot from representative of public administration. We will meet with the president, but also from civic society. We know what is necessary in order to make a sound basis for Ukrainian state, fight with the corruption, reform of judiciary system, and also maintain the democracy in the form of election, but also support civic society, talk with them. So this is obvious, and these are recommendations given by international organizations, and we share that opinion. But there is a very important moment. I think that it's a bit of even a lot of optimism, and I share that optimism. There is a chance. You have everything in your hands. I'm talking about Ukrainian society, to organize yourself, to demonstrate to the West that you can do it. And I think that our role is, countries like Sweden and Poland, other from Central Europe, we had common history also during our last 70 years, to convince the West European countries that you have a right to dream about joining the European Union, joining transatlantic relations, joining the West. And it is our way. Maybe not immediately in a few months or even years, but as a goal, it is not excluded, I think, because everything is here in your hands.
Hello. I have a question. What is the respectively Polish and Swedish policy on Ukrainian labor migrants for the next 5 years? And the same for the students, which most likely can stay in your country. Do you want them to stay, to leave? Do you expect them to stay or to leave? Thank you very much.
Because this is a very important question, and we, of course, are very satisfied with the presence of Ukrainian citizens working in Poland, studying in Poland. We have some experience concerning that issue as a country. After joining the European Union, more than 2 million Poles emigrated from Poland. There is as big as 1 million Polish citizens living in UK, only in this one country, and 150,000 in Sweden, for example, and in all countries. So we lost, so to say, part of our citizens as a part of our labor market. So Ukrainians help us just also to develop our economy. Poland is a country which develops 5% yearly, as far as GDP is concerned, so the quickest one. So we are very proud that we contribute to the development of the European Union because our economy is based on robust economic basis. We hope that the Poles would come, and some of them are coming. After Brexit, some of them decided to come. I think it is the same for Ukraine. You can treat it as a kind of an investment. You give freedom to your citizens to choose their destiny, so to say, to earn money, to support families here, like we profit from the money sent by Poles working in Western European Union. They support their families. And it is how it is. There is no other way you can avoid that problem. But we now Ukrainians have possibility to go also to other countries. I think that if Ukrainian citizens understand that this reform here are deep and that the state is efficient and that they can use experience and knowledge they learned abroad, they might come and support the state. And also for us it is a problem how to create conditions for Poles working 10 years in the city in London to come back and have a career in Poland. It's a challenge, but we understand your position and your also kind of a concerns that many Ukrainians are leaving and they are lost for you. But I think no, it's not necessarily. It could be treated as a kind of an asset. You can argue in the European Union that your citizens contribute to the development of the European Union. It could be an argument. So I see it in that way.
Maybe just to add a few words to that, I think most importantly that there are rules about emigration or asylum or just free movement between countries. And on top of that, I represent a government that has fought very hard to make sure that there are sort of fair conditions also for people within the European Union, for example, that we talk a lot about how pigs are transported and exactly the rules for them, but we do not always talk about the exploitation of people or labor. And I think that this also has to be a responsibility of the European Union, has to be discussed. What should be the conditions for people who work in another country? And we think that they should be treated in the same way as people living in that country originally. So that is part of the political debate right now in the European Union. And exactly as Jacek said, we have many Poles that have come to Sweden to work, and this is also part of our experience and do hard work there, and also are assimilated or are integrated in the way that they choose themselves. And I think that this is good for us as well. So this represents the whole idea of the European Union also, that we should be able to move and work or study or live in another country.
Дякую, будь ласка. В кого ще запитання, шановні колеги? Можна скористатися такою унікальною можливістю, насправді, коли два міністри закордонних справ одночасно в одній аудиторії, тому можна ставити будь-які запитання. Будь ласка. Запитання від чоловіка на горі, потім ось тут далі.
Good afternoon. I'm a first-year law student, and I have a very interesting question to you. Does international law really work now or not? Because we remember the policy of appeasement in the 20th century that led us to international war, that led us to the millions of victims of that war. And if aggressive country does not follow the international law rules, what should we do next? Follow international law rules or act against them? Thank you.
That is a very clever question, because that is exactly the debate that we're having right now. where we see that our rules-based order, as we know it, is being questioned, is being challenged, also by big countries that we have previously thought were definitely on our side, or that thought alike as us Europeans, and also the issue of free trade and the things that we think have created the wealth and an economic development, a rapid economic development, is now being questioned. So we have that debate at the moment. But the thing that will happen, of course, if we abandon a rules-based order, including the European security order that, of course, Russia is in blatant breach of by what they are doing in eastern Ukraine and also with the annexation of Crimea, is that you give power to the big ones, to the big countries or to the richest countries and those that can dominate. So I think we who believe in a rules-based order believe in international cooperation, because that is also being questioned. Now it's more of a transactional policy or one nation first. We must also stand up, and we must form an opposition to this rather strong movement that we see to abandon this. But I think at the core of this is very much globalization as well. And I think the inequalities that have been created by globalization. So if you leave, as I said before, if you leave big groups in a society beside, that they never see the benefits of all of this, of course they will start to oppose. Of course they will start to react. So I think that the enormous divides and gaps between groups of people, the growing inequality, is part of the explanation also to this. And it is then exploited by powers that sometimes are extremist or even fascist, and we have to look out for that. And we need you. We need a young generation now to engage in politics, to make politics a good business again, a good activity again, that can instead bridge those divides, that can create a good atmosphere for dialogue and using all the diplomatic tools. And I think one main priority of my government is to work for democracy, to strengthen democracy, the rule of law, and equality again. So that is, I think, the task that we have ahead of us.
If I may add to that question, of course, you can say, no, it does not work. But the problem is that you always should support and maintain, uphold international law, particularly middle-sized countries like Poland or Ukraine, which are not superpower, but, they are not small, of course. In our interest is to maintain the rule of law. Therefore, in our foreign policy, particularly concerning membership in the Security Council, main priority is to maintain international law, to make that the breach of international law must not go unpunished. Therefore, we do not accept annexation of Crimea. As an example, Poland issued a statement in which we declare that we will never accept annexation of Crimea after the United States. Maybe, Margot, we differ a bit because she sees the breach of international law equally by two superpowers. For us, Russia, it was the main threat to security and main country which started aggressive policy vis-à-vis Georgia 2008 and Ukraine. And it is a threat to security, so we have to maintain international law. The answer to your question from the other perspective is that indeed there is kind of a change in international politics. Now power politics dominate over this rule-based liberal order. So the world becomes realistic, but how we could protect our interests or how we could withstand that pressure, I think that we should cooperate. First of all, unite ourselves within the European Union, which is institutions based on international law as far as international relations are concern, but also to maintain alliance with other democracies, with some criticisms again against the United States concerning trade relations, but it is still a democracy. So we have to, for Poland, transatlantic relations are key, are crucial. Even we see some deficiencies of American president policy concerning this rule-based system. We have to unite in order to withstand aggressive policy of countries like Russia. So it would be our answer to your question.
I have to defend myself. I don't think we have exactly the same view on Russia. Russia's aggression and the fact that they have, so we have absolutely no other analysis of this, and we fight very hard, both Poland and Sweden, in the European Union to maintain the very strict and I would say consistent policy that we have against Russia, including sanctions against Russia. But what I'm saying is that it is also a problem when countries like the US actually no longer starts trade wars or declares that they no longer are interested in international cooperation. And they have been our most important ally and partner in working for democracy. And if they suddenly start to shift, this is a serious thing. I don't compare the two. I think they have to be held apart, but it is it's a very, very important debate that we will have to take about what is going on right now.
Будь ласка, запитання.
Good afternoon. We are so glad to welcome in our university. And my question is, what are the expectations of European Union and especially Poland and Sweden from our new president? And the last part of my question, and do you have an intention to change the way of our partnership due to the last occurrences? Thank you.
No, well, we come with exactly the intention of trying to find out more about the priorities of the president and the plan for the future. We will offer our continued support, and we will say that we come as very close friends. We will say that we have contributed also with a lot of money to make sure that the reform process can continue. We will ask him about the reforms and what he thinks about continuing reforms when it comes to the system of justice, fighting corruption, making sure that reforms are introduced that actually also benefits the whole population, so that every citizen of Ukraine can feel that we are included in a new model, and that he will work in a democratic manner. I will ask him about the inclusion of women, definitely, because I worry a little bit. I haven't seen much of appointment of women, and I think that we will ask also what he thinks about the process when it comes to what goes on in Donbass and with Russia, because this, of course, dominates the whole debate. I will congratulate him on establishing those contacts with the European Union and thinking that Ukraine is European, and we belong together and we will work together. Have I forgotten something?
No, perfectly. I will not discuss the issue of women, but I agree with that. It is important aspect. I think that for the moment, and I think it will remain, President has demonstrated that he has support of Ukrainian society, and he has a credit of confidence from the European side. It was already announced that his first visit will be to Brussels to talk to the European Union representatives and NATO representatives. It is a confirmation of pro-European policy, which is welcomed, and it is very good that it was done. However, the reforms are crucial. It will be expected that the INF advice and requirements will be somehow fulfilled. I remember from Polish time of transformation, sometimes reforms are painful in the short term for society. So it will be Also good that if he introduces reforms, some of them are painful because prices might go up of some articles and even unemployment may rise like in Poland. But that it is necessary and that he has support. It will be used by opposition, of course, how it was in Poland and everywhere. But it is important to give him a chance to introduce these reforms of judiciary system, anti-corruption measures, but also economy, some necessary in order to be more independent and reliable in economically wise.
Дякую. Останнє питання, будь ласка.
Thank you. I know the problem with Russian Federation and the war in our country is more important. But you know, I'm more worried about environmental issues in our world. So I have a question for you. How Ukraine, the countries of the European Union, can improve the ecological situation in our world? Thank you.
No, this is definitely, I don't know if we'll have time to discuss also climate change, but this is the overarching task for all of us to try to adapt to and mitigate the effects of climate change. And it's definitely also for, not only for you, for us as well, but for a new generation. And it's very late in the day to deal with this, but of course for you it's mainly about the energy system, and you have to change into more renewable, using more renewable energy. You have to save more energy, and you also have to have, I think, an ambitious policy when it comes to biodiversity and fighting environmental problems. And I know this from the time when I was Environment Commissioner, that there is so much to do. And also with water resources, that will probably also be a big thing for you as well. So I think a policy for this, and to have, of course, devoted ministers and departments that work on these issues, but that's for you to decide exactly how. But I think it has to be one of the priorities, as it is for us and within the European Union as well. It's the number one issue. Already you, in 10 years, you will see a very different world to live in. So the effects will be seen very soon. And unfortunately also the countries that are Arctic countries will see this even earlier and more, with more strength we will be hit by it.
You mean the level of Black Sea will increase, yes?
The level of?
Black Sea will.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. But we know that, for example, Poland sent more than, were they 250, how many of the firefighters sent to Sweden last summer. In 230 years, we've never had forest fires of the kind that we saw in Sweden last year. We could not deal with it alone, so we had the support from other EU countries and from the civil mechanism that exists, civil defense mechanism that exists. And this we'll see more of these extreme weather conditions with landslides, with heavy rains, with these kind of storms or forest fires. So this is exactly what the IPCC has told us in all of their reports over a number of years. So
Дякую. Дякую, пані міністр. Шановні друзі, дозвольте подякувати надзвичайному та повноважному послу Королівства Швеції в Україні пану Мартіну Хакстрюму і надзвичайному та повноважному послу Республіки Польща в Україні пану Бартошу Ціхоцькі за сприяння нашій сьогоднішній зустрічі. І сказати, що ми маємо тяглу традицію з посольством Швейцарської конфедерації в Україні на проведення таких публічних заходів у нас в університеті. Щомісячний цикл лекцій на запрошення надзвичайного та повноважного посла Швейцарії в Україні, відомих політиків, міністрів, громадських діячів, військових. І ми пропонуємо посольству Швеції, посольству Польщі долучитись до цієї традиції. І щиро дякуємо за сьогоднішній захід. І наш ректор на зустрічі з їх високоповажностями, міністрами розповів коротко про наш університет, тому дозвольте від імені всіх присутніх, від університетської громади вручити пані міністру ось такий сувенір, щоб вдома у Швеції згадувати про наш Червоний корпус. І такий самий сувенір дозвольте вручити пану міністру, щоб дружній і близький для нас Польщі, він завжди згадував про наш університет. Хочу підкреслити, що пан міністр Чапутович є професором, габілітованим Варшавського університету, нашого давнього і традиційного партнера. І кілька тижнів тому делегація Варшавського університету була в цій аудиторії з публічною лекцією про відносини Варшавського університету і університету в Києві. Тому давайте ще раз подякуємо. І запрошуємо всіх до collective photo.